Hello, fiber friends. I'm so happy to see you today. Guess what? We did it. This is the end, the last video in the series of spinning the alpaca blanket from the animal all the way to finished yarn. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get this project all wrapped up. See what I did there? Wrapped up. After the yarn has been plied, it looks like this. And it's so easy to want to just say, yes, it's done. But there's a few more steps that we need to do before we can call this truly finished yarn. First things first, I've taken the bobbin off of my wheel. This has the final plied yarn on it. The next thing I'm going to do is put this onto a lazy Kate. The lazy Kate will hold my bobbin for me so that I can put the yarn onto a niddy-noddy. That is actually what it is called. It is called a niddy-noddy. Don't ask my husband what it's called because you will get snickers and giggles. I don't know why. He thinks it's hilarious, but that's what it's called. It's a niddy-noddy. Of course, you can always skein your yarn straight off the bobbin while it's still on the wheel, but there's a few things that I do first to set that up. Number one is that I take the fiber out of the orifice. There's no reason for it to go through all the friction of the hooks and the orifice. The next thing is that I want the bobbin to spin around freely because I'm just pulling this off. So I take the break off of the bobbin, and I don't want the flyer to be spinning around, because what'll happen if you just take the break off and let both of these spin freely, your yarn will catch on the hook on the flyer, and the flyer's going to go one way, the bobbin's going to go another. It's going to unravel, but it'll be caught on the hook, and then before you know it, you have a bird's nest of yarn caught up in there, and you're going to be untangling, and it'll be a mess. So what I do is to take the break off the bobbin, the Scotch tension, if that's how your wheel is set up. I put the Scotch tension onto the whirl, so it's actually in the same groove as the drive band, and that, you can see, I cranked it down, so that's holding the flyer in place. It's not going to catch on the yarn as it's coming off the bobbin and start spinning different ways and make a mess. So that basically just puts the brake on the flyer, loosens the bobbin to spin freely, take the yarn out of the orifice, and I'm ready to skein. With the niddy-noddy, the two cross pieces are where I'm going to be guiding the yarn. I want the yarn to basically fold over itself, so it's going to make like a large, if you can think of a rubber band, a loop around here that comes up, over, around, and then another loop. So when it's finished, I'll be able to unfold it out and it'll make one big long stack of loops of the yarn going around and around and around, and that makes a skein. To wrap onto the niddy-noddy, I'm going to take the end of the yarn and hold it in the center with one hand. I'm not going to let go with this hand because if I do and I lose my place, when I take it off of here, I'm going to have a mess. This can be a little bit of an arm workout if you're not used to this kind of motion. When I first started spinning, this is a little story time, I guess, because well, I'm here skeining, so why not? When I was first learning how to do this, I had recent neck fusions and I was in physical therapy, and I was dealing with pinched nerves in my arm and my neck, and it was really hard to do this. Just lifting it up was very difficult. And so I don't want to assume that everybody out there is able to hold one of these up. This is made of wood, it's a little heavy. Of course, now my health is recovered and I am able to use this tool. And I'm also able to lose my place while talking. Okay, there we go. So there are some other things that you can do if this method doesn't work for you. If all else fails, the thing I did at the very beginning was I just didn't wash my yarn. I just didn't. I used a ball winder because that's what I had and that's what I was able to maneuver with how my arms were. Another thing that works instead of this is to use a Swift. And Swift is a very, very useful tool. I will be using a Swift after I wash these skeins to re-skein them so that they're all nice and organized and neat and tidy after washing. So I'll show you what that tool looks like. So that's the end of it. I'm just tucking that end right in here and making sure that I keep this end, the one I started with, organized with the bundle of yarn that it belongs with. I need to keep that all together right there. So, all right, let's go tie it off. So one way to do it, honestly, is just tie it around the bundle. And that works, especially if it's a smaller skein and it doesn't have as many strands coming through. But if you want to keep it a little more organized so it doesn't slip around your knot, you can bring this part through, back and forth, maybe divide each section into 3 and put it back and forth through 3. And then tie off at the top. And I just do a very basic, simple overhand knot. Just like that. You can trim the excess if you want. It doesn't bother me. This is not the final yarn, so the final skein. It's not the final presentation, I should say. Tie off the next portion. So to take this off, I'm going to grab a bundle, come up to the top where it's looped over one of the cross beams, and just scoot it off the end very gently. When you're wrapping this onto the niddy-noddy, you don't want to go too tight because it can be difficult to get it off of that cross beam, and you don't want to rip or tear or snap your yarn. And just like that, it will unfold right off of there. Just trying to hold that on there so you can see. It's coming right off of there. And there it is. Beautiful skein of hand-spun alpaca. I let it sink in. I don't want to agitate. I don't want to force it around. I don't want to be rough with it at all. It'll sink in there, and as it sinks in, it'll absorb the water. It'll sort of move through the water as it goes down to the bottom, and that'll just give it a gentle rinse. I actually let it soak for about 40 minutes, and I'm back. Here it is. It has gotten darker. That's because it soaked up the water, and if you see, the water is a little smidge cloudy, so that's good. I definitely think that you can get a little more of the dust and dirt, especially with alpaca, off of it after it's been processed and spun and loosened up a bit. Next, I will put it on the spin cycle. I definitely want to make sure that it does not agitate. So when it's set to spin, it shouldn't start until the lid is closed. If it's on agitate, it'll go ahead and start agitating right away. That's a typical setting for most washing machines. So that's one way to tell you're on the right track. If I pop it open, I can see it's all turning in there. The water's draining out. That's what I want it to do. Here is the yarn now that it has come out of the spin cycle from the wash. I can check each tie and make sure everything is going the right direction. Are you ready for this? Here is all the spun yarn from that alpaca blanket. It's a lot of yarn. So there's one final step in the process with all this yarn, and that is to thwack the yarn. I do want to mention that I wouldn't ever thwack the yarn because there was a problem with the spinning balance in the ply. I would thwack the yarn to help it bloom, to let the fuzzy halo effect come out, and to help the yarn fluff up. I just give the yarn a swing around and a thump like that on the chair, and then I take it around maybe an eighth, give it another thump, and I just continue around the skein, give it another thump. Okay. So I'm just scooching it around like that and just giving it a thump, and that's it. That will give it a lovely bloom. This one is ready to dry. This is my yarn Swift. use it and place the skein around it and push this part up and it will open just like an umbrella. And then to keep that in position, I bring this up and it just has a little wooden screw. Tighten that on there and it's ready to go. This will spin as I wind it off.
The fiber is transferred from the Swift onto the niddy-noddy. Now I can find out what the yardage is. I know that the distance from one cross piece to the other is 19 inches on this niddy-noddy. So I'm going to take that 19 inches and I'm going to multiply it by 4. And that gives me the number of inches to make one wrap all the way around the whole niddy-noddy, which is 76 inches. If I multiply that by the number of strands that are being wrapped, which was 114, I get 8,664 inches. That's a lot of inches. Let's make that a more meaningful number. So to do that, I will divide by 12. So that is 722 feet. But when we use yarn, we talk in yards. So I'll divide that 722 feet by 3 to give me 240.666 forever. I prefer to round down. I would rather accidentally have an extra part of a yard than to ever round up and think I have more material for a project and run out partway through. So I'll take that 0.6 forever off and call it 240 yards. The skein has 240 yards of yarn. To determine the number of wraps per inch, I have this handy dandy little tool from Ashford. So I'm just going to loosely lay the yarn right in this little notch. Here we have them all nicely laid across the bottom there. So this yarn is 11 wraps per inch. This is my handy dandy little postal scale and it's set to ounces. You can also set this one to grams, but I'm using ounces. I'll just set that right on there and we'll see. All right, so it's a 6.8 ounce skein. Now that we have all the information about the yarn, I'm ready to fill out the tag. Here is the final finished product.